Hello everyone and thanks for coming back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the Runcam Racer 3. This is the 1.8mm lens version, which means it has a field of view of 160 degrees. It weighs just under 6 grams. It's a 19 by 19mm camera. From the lens to the back plate, it looks like it's 19mm there as well. From the lens to the connector, it looks like 21mm. Comes with this mounting adapter for larger installations, your wiring harness, mounting screws, a control accessory you can mount right to your frame. Of course, it came with a lens cap. Go outside and you can see the clouds. It's not exactly the sun right through it, but we've got that sun pointing right at our camera, and I'm going to do my typical test where I cover the lens with the cloth right on the lens, and then I'm also going to have it various distances away so you get an idea how quickly the lens transitions from dark to light or from direct light to not so direct light, those things. I do this in every test. For those who've been around the channel a while, you probably get bored with it. And you can see we got snow on the ground still. This is actually about a week ago. I thought I posted this review 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I didn't. So I had to go out, and about a week ago I started doing my testing. Finally we get to the point where we can actually put the video together and I can show it to you. This is our flight sample. Same day, just set it down on the driveway and go for a little cruise around the neighborhood. This camera touts really low latency, 6 milliseconds or less. It also has 3 presets: light tracks, personal, and darkness. And then that accessory that I control, that control accessory, that's fairly interesting. At least that's new to me. I hadn't seen that before. I'm curious if those that go out and race, do you want something like that? Is that something that Runcam came up with on their own, or is the FPV community out there calling for it? Looking at the garage here of my neighbors, this gives you an idea of fisheye or lens distortion. I do this every test. Sometimes I feel like I shouldn't say it, but I never know who might be watching for the first time, and so they might be wondering why you're just sitting there looking at the garage. We don't have extreme shadows to fly through, of course, this time of year. There's nary a leaf on any tree around, so we just have to go through the shadows that we do have. And I like to fly low, so we do a lot of low flying. Some of the other specs of the camera, it does come in 2 different lenses, the 1.8, which I have, and the 2.1. The 2.1 is reported field of view of 140 degrees. It is switchable between 4.3 and 16 by 9 and NTSC and PAL. It does have camera control, so you can wire it up to your flight controller, and you can use camera control to control the camera and its settings. It's also updatable, so if you have the SpeedyBee app and you have the camera wired to your flight control for camera control, then you can update the firmware on the camera. I don't know how often those things change or come out, so that's information that if you have seen camera firmware updates come out and have actually used them, please let us know what you found. Was it useful? Was it a minor change? Was it a dramatic change? Maybe what the changes were. Doesn't even necessarily have to be this camera. Any real camera that you've used that feature on. I think Runcam might be the only company doing that outside of the typical HD 4K cameras. You know, they have firmware updates on them from time to time. The one-touch scenes that they have listed on their website, they list them as personal, light tracks, and darkness. Now, I didn't wire this to the flight controller, so that makes sense. You got a 3-way switch. You can set up those 3. You don't get to apparently choose which 3, but I found using the joystick that it had many more scenes than that, and we'll take a look at those when we get to the outside footage. Also, the voltage that it supports, you may have seen that on the box, and I had that on screen, supports from 5 volts all the way up to 36 volts. We've seen quite a bit of flight footage as I try to talk my way through it all. Let's go into doing a little bit of darkness. We're also going to knock out the settings as well when we're out here in the dark. Starting off here in the garage, and you can see that where we've got the interface where we can manipulate the on-screen elements there. We can turn those things on or off, or we can change their positions. You can see that sharp view is on and that widescreen is off, and I've currently got it set to NTSC. You've also got the pilot, which by default comes with the name Runcam. You can, of course, change that. I'm curious, at races, do you guys use those things? It's something else. You can see that I'm using the joystick control, and it's raining out. So I'm not going to walk out into the rain and fry everything. But this is where I'm going to cycle through the different scenes as I can use them on the joystick. And I really didn't see a big change in the goggles from one to another. I think if you look at the sky area, that's where you'll see the biggest change. Something else about the DVR, I don't think the DVR does it justice, or maybe it's because this one is made more for OLED goggles, that in the OLED goggles, I felt I could see better than we can see here in the DVR. Our neighborhood is very dark, but but I felt as though that if we were at a shopping center that had parking lot lights, that this would be very serviceable. I've been in some really dark parking garages, so I suppose if you were in one that was fairly well lit, this would also work out just fine. I do cycle through a few things. Of course, I don't have a light track set up, so I'm not showing you light tracks, but you can see that we've got way more than just the 3 that are available when you use the UART control. I am going to step over into the darker area over here, because right now I'm standing out in front of the garage in the light. We also get to see the camera settings as well when I go into those, and you can, you know, take a look at those things. There's not a lot there. This isn't a camera that has a lot of adjustments. We've seen much more in-depth menus on other cameras. Cameras from Runcam, they have a lot of settings. This is where I'm going to go into the really dark area. And again, this is darker than it presents in the goggles, but that could be the OLED goggles and how this lens and sensor is set up for OLED goggles. So your mileage may vary based upon my opinion that I'm giving you. So what do you think? It's time for your diagnosis. It's time for you to let me know what you think. It's time for you to let anybody who's willing to read the comments as well as Runcam what you think. And I'm also curious if you do leave a comment about the imaging that you saw on screen, if you could leave your opinion or tell us whether you're more of a casual flyer. Maybe you go out and fly bandos or do fun flies in your backyard or something like that. Or are you a racer? Do you compete in multi-GP and other race organizations? I think that's an important part of this as well, to find out what the market is for this particular type of camera. You know, it's not cheap, and it touts, you know, the really low latency, which if you're a speed demon on the track, low latency is going to be really, really important. I've tried to do latency on the channel before, and it didn't work out very well. I hear that RC Shem has got a great way of doing various camera testing, so if there's something additional that you would like to see, I would sure recommend going over to his channel. If you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.